James Bond villains are often described as larger than life, madmen, megalomaniacs, monsters, but that's not quite right, because Bond villains aren't really opposites. They're alternatives. They're not what Bond fights against. They're what Bond could become. Same training, same intelligence, same appetite for risk. The difference isn't skill, it's restraint. It is purpose. It is the mission. Hi, this is Dan.
And Tom.
From Cracking the Code of Spy Movies. In this episode, we're going to look at a few Bond villains not as enemies, but as mirrors. So here we go with Mirror, Mirror, the villains who reflect James Bond. Each one reflects a version of Bond where a single boundary disappears.
All right, so let's take away some things from Bond. Let's take away his loyalty, take away his purpose, and take away his emotional control. And what do you get? It's the villain. I mean, Robert Davi, when we interviewed him about his villain, Franz Sanchez in License to Kill, he said exactly this, especially about his character, Sanchez. Let's have a listen.
So I go in, and now I have to meet with Timothy and John Glenn, and we hit it off famously. Timothy and I went back to Casino Royale, and we talked about that and the essence of Bond and the villain being mirror images of each other, as Ian Fleming describes in the book.
He and Bond were mirror images of each other.
Yeah. To understand Bond villains, we need a framework. Every Bond antagonist follows pretty much the same pattern. First is the shared competence. Villains are never stupid. They're not lucky. They're professionals. They are prepared.
Well, yeah, they've got a plan. I mean, sometimes it's very detailed and meticulous, like building a volcano lair. But there's always a plan that these guys have.
Yeah, and secondly, they have a shared worldview. And that's like, okay, what? A shared worldview? Yeah, they understand power, leverage, and the fear the same way Bond does. They fully understand what they are capable of and what impact they will have on those affected or on those who have to deal with what they are planning or executing.
So they have a worldview and they know how they fit in it.
Yeah. And third, the crucial difference is a moral failure. This is one line they cross that Bond does not. Bond and the villains start in the same place. They're bright, they're trained, they are prepared, and they have a mission. But when the moment comes to a stop, the villain keeps going. That's the mirror.
So I think we're saying Bond minus restraint equals the villain.
Yeah, pretty much. Right.
All right.
That's
So
what I want to talk about.
Yeah, so let's delve into this a little bit by looking at some of the villains in the James Bond movies.
Yeah. All right.
All right. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with Goldfinger because it's a good one. It's not Blofeld, so I actually like starting with this one because he's often remembered for his excess. He's got big plans. And when he talks about gold.
This is gold, Mr. Bond. All my life I've been in love with its color, its brilliance, its divine heaviness.
He loves gold, lasers, Fort Knox. He thinks big.
Yeah, he thinks big. But strip all that away, and what you're left with is a man who thinks exactly like Bond. Both love games, both cheat, both believe intelligence beats strength, and that's the same.
Yeah, now, when you say they both cheat, when Bond plays golf against Goldfinger, he deliberately cheats there, right? Because he's going to use that as his advantage. Yeah,
but he doesn't cheat to win. But to prove Goldfinger is a fraud. And of course, Goldfinger has no problem cheating to win. Goldfinger cheats to win forever at everything. We saw him cheating at cards, at golf, and basically he cheats against the world every day. So
that's the difference. Bond breaks the rules tactically, where Goldfinger breaks them structurally.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That's good. I like that. And I mean, Goldfinger is Bond, but where money replaces duty. What's that?
Okay.
I like that. Now, where winning matters more than fairness, and where the point of the game isn't exposure but domination. I mean, that's really what Goldfinger wants to do. Goldfinger isn't smarter than Bond. Goldfinger is just less restrained. He has fewer rules. He cares little about the rest of the world in terms of his rules. He makes the rules for himself. So
Yeah, it's all about him.
it's exactly. All right. So I think that's good. So that's a nice start with Goldfinger. But now let's do look at Blofeld, because Blofeld's in a lot of stuff here. But again, the character is pretty much the same. It's what is Blofeld? He's really Bond without loyalty. So Blofeld is Bond's most persistent enemy, and for a reason. He isn't emotional. He isn't impulsive. He's really more administrative, organizational. He has built an army of loyalists to him. But
Yeah, but Blofeld and James Bond share something crucial here, though. There's a detachment.
yeah, yeah,
They can use people as assets and not worry about it. They operate internationally.
yeah,
They stay emotionally guarded for the most part. Not always, but for the most part.
yeah. Well, for the most part.
But
Yeah,
there's a big difference between Bond and Blofeld in that Bond answers to someone, Blofeld answers to himself.
yeah, that comes in kind of handy for Blofeld.
Until it doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, Bond accepts hierarchy, right? He's got M, he's got MI6, he's got the whole state. Everything is part of what he does, but he does answer to people, like you said. While Blofeld, he doesn't accept hierarchy like Bond accepts hierarchy. Blofeld becomes the hierarchy. He's the peak of it, the controlling element of it. And again, that's the mirror. Blofeld is Bond without this national identity, without accountability, without anyone who could say, no, that is power, ultimate, absolute power.
And also his downfall.
Yeah, it eventually it will be. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? Remember that?
Yeah.
If Bond stopped answering to anyone, if he decided he knew best always, he kind of does though sometimes.
Yeah, he does kind of do that sometimes. I mean, think about License to Kill.
Yeah. He wouldn't be a hero then though. He'd be Blofeld.
But no, but we also have to remember though that when we talk about this hero stuff, Ian Fleming never really called James Bond a hero.
Yeah, yeah.
He was more of an anti-hero, as he was a complex mix of espionage, vices, and a capacity for violence.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Fleming said the last thing I wanted James Bond to be was the hero type, rather the opposite, unquote.
Yeah,
A blunt instrument to the government. He never intended Bond to be likable.
Yeah, we have a great video out on that same concept, that Fleming never intended Bond to be likable. And what does that mean? Was Bond good? In a Playboy article in 1964, Fleming said, I don't think that he is necessarily a good guy or a bad guy. Who is? I mean, Fleming's like, because Fleming knows, he came from naval intelligence, right? He knows that, hey, sometimes for your government, you're doing stuff that maybe could be considered you're bad.
So here Fleming straddling the line as James Bond often does.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
and it's exactly the case. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, because Bond is walking this line, and
Fine line, yeah.
yeah, Blofeld never walks and never would walk that same line because he's walking on his own line.
He creates his own line.
Bond does report to someone, unlike Blofeld, and that someone, M, who represents MI6, is an organization that must answer to higher powers itself. So
Yeah.
there's layers of, I have to report to somebody.
Yeah.
Now, if we look at most of the villains, like Largo from Thunderball, they're
Oh, I like Largo.
they're
Yeah.
Bond without rules. Now we have to remember that Largo is a Spectre agent. He's number 2. He's not
Yeah.
Blofeld. So he reports to someone.
Yeah.
But he enjoys luxury, women, speedboats, yachts. Violence is a lifestyle. Look at how he kills his goon Quist for not getting Bond in his hotel room.
Yeah.
He has him thrown to the sharks in the shark pool at Palmyra. I mean, this totally demonstrates Largo's ruthlessness in eliminating failures within his criminal organization, Spectre. He doesn't want to have to go back to his boss and have any accountability. The guy's just gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
I mean, Spectre kind of does that a lot. You don't screw up with Spectre. It's kind of like the mob. You have a job for life. You just don't know how long it's going to be.
Now, Largo reflects Bond's cool detachment, though,
Yeah.
because
I mean,
he has to be detached to be able to do some of these
Yeah.
things.
Largo and Thunderball, that was a perfect timing because he really does mirror the Connery era Bond. Calm, controlled, and really emotionally distant. He rarely raises his voice. He lets others do the dirty work, and he treats murder as procedure, not passion. So it's just a process for him. Like when he threw Quist to the shark, it was like, oh well, we don't need him anymore. You're out.
Next.
Yeah, you're out. So the mirror effect here really is Largo shows what Bond could become if empathy disappeared entirely from Bond's world. So this is interesting stuff.
Yeah, and I think that empathy is a big part of this because since Largo reports to Blofeld, it's like Bond has to report to somebody. But since Largo doesn't have the empathy, that's one of the big differences between the two.
Yeah. Now, let's move on a little bit to Scaramanga, because Scaramanga is one of my favorite villains. I think Christopher Lee was fantastic. I just read a comment somebody was saying that he was the wrong guy for that. It's like, what? He was the perfect. Everybody in the world says he was the perfect guy for that, except this one guy. I don't know what that was.
Well,
but anyway,
everyone has taste, and not everyone
Yeah.
has the same taste, and that's the way it
right,
works.
yeah, right. So, from the man with the golden gun, we have this villain with such high regard for himself and his skills and his purpose that hardly any agent working for any organization could match that ability to do whatever it is he wants to do. I mean, it would be hard. For money, kill for money. That's all. That's what he does. He kills for money. So that kind of distances him from this organizational kind of thing that Bond is trapped in.
Yeah, because he's kind of like Bond without a purpose. I mean, his purpose is solely who's going to pay me $1 million, right? I'm a freelancer.
That's his only purpose.
I don't have anything behind me that I have to worry about, right? I kill for money and nothing else except maybe his pride, because he's a very prideful villain.
Yeah. I think if you look at this, it's one of the clearest mirrors in the entire franchise. Scaramanga, he isn't insane. He isn't ideological. He doesn't have any of that kind of stuff going. He's a professional killer, just like Bond. Both are pretty much lone operators. We say Bond is connected to MI6 and all that, but when he's doing his thing, he's kind of a lone operator. They're both proud of their skills. They know what they can do, and they're defined by their reputation. People in the know do know about Scaramanga. And, well, everybody in the world seems to know about James Bond in the spy world, anyway. So it's like, that's never a secret.
Yeah, but there are a couple differences here.
Yeah.
First is Bond generally kills reluctantly. And I'll say generally. There are a few times where he's all for it. Scaramanga kills identity first. I identify who my target is, and that's who I'm going to go kill.
Yeah.
So for Bond, killing is a tool in his tool belt. It's a task. It's something that may have to be done for the mission. Whereas Scaramanga, it's who he is. He's a killer. He kills for contract fulfillment, and he enjoys that.
Yeah, Bond and Scaramanga do have a little dialogue on this. Here's the quote.
When I kill, it's on the specific orders of my government. And those I kill are themselves killers.
Oh, come, Mr. Bond, you disappoint me. You get as much fulfillment out of killing as I do, so why didn't you admit it?
I admit killing you would be a pleasure.
You should have done that when you first saw me. But then, of course, the English don't consider it sporting to kill in cold blood, do they?
Don't count on that.
That's a good quote. So Scaramanga's fundamental question here is really, if you're good at killing, is that what you're for? Is that what you are? Is that what you're all about? That's the key. For him, that is what he's all about. So it kind of reminds me a little bit of Skyfall, too, when Judi Dench, of course, pretty much wonders about Bond's soul and his whole purpose beyond mere violence, especially after he was presumed dead and all that. There's some nice soul-searching dialogue between them in Skyfall. And here, Scaramanga, he's not ever soul-searching here. He knows what he's doing. You give me $1 million, I kill whoever it is you say to kill. That's what I'm going to do, and I only need one shot. So There is a difference here. But again, a very good mirror of Bond and what Bond would become without purpose.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Now, one of the things you said a second ago is that, they're lone operators. Bond often has help. He's kind of in control of
Help.
things, but he does get some help sometimes.
He gets
But
help.
now, back in The Man with the Golden Gun, Scaramanga is very much like Bond when the mission disappears. Because when Bond isn't on a mission, he's just Bond. He's a killer, a blunt instrument of the government. But for Scaramanga, there's no country, there's no cause, there's just the craft, just skill, just purpose waiting for your next mission or identity. And Bond is kind of the same way.
Yeah, and if you look at that, I mean, that's really not freedom. I mean, for Scaramanga, it is kind of freedom because he, again, takes the contract. If he wants the contract, he goes and kills, and that's that. But for Bond, it's fundamental emptiness. And his life, especially in the novels, reflect this to a large degree. It's a lonely job, and it could be a short, lonely life. The danger that your life could be snuffed out at any moment, even when you're not even on an assignment, is real and pervasive. I mean, in real life, spies get killed when they're not on an assignment because they're double agents or whatever, and they're found out. So for Bond, it's like constant danger. It's different. It is an emptiness.
All right, Dan, we've got some shout outs here, I think. So why don't you go give us the shout outs?
Oh, yeah. We love getting feedback from people who listen to the podcast, who are cracking the code of Spy Movie Show. So here's a big shout out to Pietro Rossi, who gave us feedback on 3 different episodes this time, including our last one, 20 Things You Missed in You Only Live Twice, and Stuart Bassinger, Jim Phelps, again, who gave us feedback on 3 different podcast episodes, the Ultimate Bondcast, who gave us positive feedback on License to Change, the future of spy movies, and 20 Things You Missed in Dr. No, Randy Lee Kane, who loved The Macintosh Man, and John Moss, who gives us feedback often too. Thanks. We love hearing from you all. The more we hear from you, the better we can create spy movie content that you will enjoy. So thanks. Keep it coming.
Absolutely. We really, really, really enjoy this feedback. I mean, even like Pietro on one of his feedback told us that there was a cultural difference on how something is said.
Yeah, right.
And, being an American, we don't know that. So thanks for the, hey, we do it differently here. That's great to hear.
All right. Back to the villains. And when speaking of Bond villains, we must mention again Franz Sanchez from License to Kill, Robert Davi. Bond as a rogue agent without any rules. Wow. This is the kind of thing now we make a little shift here. When we spoke to Robert Davi in our interview with him, he specifically mentions, as we said up front, how he was a mirror of Bond. We remember Sanchez is a drug lord who commands loyalty, lives extravagantly, and personally handles danger instead of hiding behind henchmen. He's charming and ruthless at the same time. And Davi is one of the few who pulls that off brilliantly. Just terrific.
Yeah, he absolutely is. Because he mirrors this Dalton era Bond.
Yes.
Because Dalton changed the character. All of a sudden, he's mirroring this intense, personal, and emotionally driven character.
Mm-hmm.
He says loyalty is worth more to him than money. And Bond is all about loyalty. Betrayal is a punished brutality. And a lot of the time, Sanchez takes it on himself.
Yeah, he has no problem with that.
For Sanchez, revenge is central to his worldview. He wants no one to step in his way.
Yeah. I mean, License to Kill Bond almost becomes Sanchez. Really, it's that close. He goes rogue. He operates outside of MI6 and its rules and guidelines. He uses deception, infiltration, manipulation, and he targets an enemy personally, not in the realm of an MI6 agent. So, wow, this is very close to him becoming Sanchez.
Well, yeah, it's all about the revenge. The revenge is central to this mission for Bond.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have to remember also that Sanchez challenges Bond because he says, you kill because it's personal. And we also have to remember what Sanchez said to Leiter when they were lowering him into the sharks.
I want you to know this is nothing personal. It's purely business.
So I mean, yeah. So in License to Kill, Bond is killing for personal reasons. In general, he's killing for work or whatever. But this is why he becomes very close to Sanchez in this movie. So the mirror effect here is Sanchez is Bond's anger, but unchecked and unredeemed, and persistent and relentless anger. And that's the difference. And Bond almost becomes Sanchez, a villain in License to Kill.
And it's also, I think, if we take the line, I want you to know this is nothing personal, it's purely business. So it's a great play on the line.
It's not personal, Sonny. It's strictly business.
It's from the movie The Godfather. It's a great line in both movies and identifies the dilemma in looking at good versus evil. If it's business, does that make it more moral than if it was personal? And for Bond here, it's personal.
Yeah.
So again, this highlights this mirror between Sanchez and Bond in License to Kill. In this case, Bond's revenge killing of Sanchez is strictly personal. It has nothing to do with business. He's avenging Della's death. And that's different because Sanchez tells later it's business and not personal. So we get the mirror opposite here, which is just wonderfully done.
Yeah. Now, coincidentally, of course, he does kill Sanchez at the end. And, I mean, MI6 was after Sanchez, and that's why they flew into Key West and was trying to get him in the first place. But that wasn't the reason why Bond was killing Sanchez. It was personal.
Well,
so
Bond didn't have to kill Sanchez.
Right. So let's skip ahead here and get to Silva in Skyfall, because I like Silva as a villain.
Yeah.
And he definitely deserves some.
He's absolutely the best part of that movie.
Yeah. So what is Silva? He's Bond, but without emotional control. Now, sometimes we think Bond doesn't have any emotional control too, but generally he does. Silva might be the most personal mirror. And by that, I mean both Bond and Silva were trained by MI6, were betrayed by the system. Bond's is very personal, with Vesper especially, and so on. And both survived extreme trauma. So they have similar wounds.
Well, yeah, and as does Trevelyan in GoldenEye, but I think I think there's actually even a closer mirror here with Silva.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's all about a different response to the wound. Because Bond takes that pain and turns it inward, and he locks it down and tries to not have it control him, where Silva turns his pain outward and weaponizes it. And so, I mean, if Bond wasn't able to lock it down, just flip a switch and Bond could be Silva.
Yeah. I mean, that's the point here. You look in the mirror, one thing happens differently, and Bond is the same as the villain with one quick little change. Silva believes loyalty is owed to him. Bond believes loyalty is owed to the job.
Oh, I like that.
That's the line, really. That's the line that's between them. Silva is Bond, who chooses grievance and revenge over service.
Now, who decides that this betrayal justifies destruction, though?
Yeah, well.
When we get that betrayal, Bond keeps functioning, except for in License to Kill, where Silva wants revenge. I mean, it's the same damage to the person.
Yeah, but it's a different discipline, really. There's always this fine line. Bond is always dancing on the edge. We saw that throughout the movie here, too. The number of times that Bond just thought he was right and went rogue, his defiance sometimes of M's directives, so close to the edge. Is Bond a psychopath? This is a good question. Actually, we answered that question in a great podcast episode with the author, Dr. Stephen McWilliams, who wrote Psychopath, Why We Are Charmed by the Anti-Hero. And we talk about Bond in that one. So that's a good one. Take a listen to that.
Yeah, so Silva's a really good mirror here. And a couple movies earlier in the series, we get another one, and that's Le Chiffre in Casino Royale.
Yeah.
I mean, Le Chiffre's, I don't know, let's call him Bond without nerve. He isn't powerful.
Okay.
He's much further down the line than Largo was in Thunderball. He was definitely not a number two. He's just a worker bee. He's leveraged, he plays the game, and so far he's played it rather well, but he's gotten himself into a little bit of a pickle because he gambles in Casino Royale not because he wants to. He gambles because he has to. He has to get the money. And the difference here is Bond gambles because he can.
Yeah, well, he's the best gambler in MI6, and of course they want him to win Le Chiffre's money, so Le Chiffre can't do what he wants to do. But both Le Chiffre and James Bond here, they operate under tremendous pressure. I mean, Bond had to win that. LeChievre had to win in Texas Hold'em. And both face torture, physically, mental. I mean, this is a tough business for both of them, whether you're on the good side or the bad side. But when the pressure peaks, it's LeChievre really who breaks.
Well, part of that's because I think Bond doesn't bargain. Where LeChievre tries to act cocky and tries to get the better of Bond in many ways, uses poison, torture. But in the end, it's LeChievre who he's on the outs and he basically begs. He's not tough. This isn't about toughness. In this case, it's about internal collapse. And it's the opposite of Bond. Bond went through all that hell and still came out good, where LeChievre shows us Bond before emotional hardening. He cracks before nerve becomes a habit. He's Bond without the psychological armor, and that's his downfall.
Yeah, and you got to think that Bond does have psychological armor. I mean, he goes through a lot of stuff on a regular basis, mission after mission, and so on. So you do have to have that armor plating, that mental. And in Bond's world, if you don't have that, it's fatal. Bond has this armor because he has developed it through tough, risky missions and through personal loss and betrayal. I mean,
Job's done. The bitch is dead.
He's been through all of this already, and he's built this. It's like he's practiced.
Well, you take that line, the bitch is dead. You talk about the emotional difference with LeChievre. That is Bond relocking things down when he says that. It's like, I had this emotional thing. I was in love with this woman, but she's dead to me now.
Yeah. We've gone through a few of the Bond villains here, and we're not going to go through all of them, obviously, because there pretty much is a synthesis among all of the Bond villains. And all of them, in one sense or another, share certain things. And so when you step back, the pattern looks obvious. It's there. Bond villains are highly trained. They're isolated. They're self-authorizing. They cut loose from oversight. They rather create it rather than have to adhere to it. They don't lack intelligence. They're bright. They lack limits. That's what they lack. And that's what gives them the power, though.
Yeah, but I think Bond survives because he accepts his limits. Where, let's go back to LeChievre again, right? He wasn't really accepting his limits. He was trying to figure out how to work around the problem he was in. Where Bond just says, hey, I've got these limits. I'm going to go back to the whole concept of duty.
Yeah.
I let structure take hold. And he allows the institution to restrain him, well, mostly.
Yeah. And structure, okay, yeah. I guess sometimes, yes.
Yeah, and so that restraint is really the difference between the hero and the villain. It's not mortality. It's not strength. It's restraint.
I like that. That's good. Now let's look at how Bond can do what he does and not become the villain. M really is Bond's moral anchor. We looked at all these villains. We looked at their characteristics. We looked at Bond and how this whole thing is a mirror thing. Now let's look at M, because M really is the institutional conscience for MI6. M represents duty, restraint, and service over ego or even revenge. And M grounds Bond's actions within the rule of law. They have to answer to 10 Downing Street. Even when MI6 bends the rules, and Bond does as well, M still grounds Bond. And M constantly is reminding Bond that he serves a cause, not personal impulses, not personal revenge. Think License to Kill and several other of the Bond movies as well, where M is constantly saying, hey, this is your mission. This isn't a personal vendetta.
Yeah, absolutely. Besides M being the voice of institutional conscience, I think M's also the voice of accountability. M is one of the few characters who can openly challenge Bond's recklessness. I mean, to his face.
Yeah, that's good.
Forcing Bond to justify his actions, not just the results. It's, I got to take this back to my command.
Yeah.
So
right.
M is acting as the moral scorekeeper, I guess, when Bond crosses ethical lines, which he sometimes does.
He does.
Right?
He does.
And M has to call him on it.
Yeah. And M is constantly doing that because he understands the human cost involved in any of these missions. So M is constantly reminding Bond of the potential collateral damage, civilian risk, political fallout, all the kinds of things Bond doesn't really want to think about. And M serves as this reminder that Bond's missions affect real people and global stability. A lot of these missions are international missions. M does consciously choose Bond for a lot of these key missions, like in The Spy Who Loved Me, Thunderball, and so on. So this pushes Bond to think beyond the immediate thrill or tactical win and more big picture stuff that is basically put in front of his face by M. So M does serve a huge, huge purpose in Bond's life, really.
Well, yeah, and I think the difference between the M actors and how they portrayed the character changes how much of this we see, because I think we see much more of it in Judi Dench's M than we do in some of the other actors who played the role.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
I think that's good. That's good stuff, too.
Yeah. All right, now, I think M is also a counterweight to Bond's 00 status, his license to kill, because M has to define the boundaries of Bond's lethal authority. You don't really have unrestricted, right? But you have a license to kill. And I think M reinforces that killing is a last resort, not the default go-to option.
Right. It's also a license not to kill, he tells him one time, right? Yeah.
Yep. And so I think M is embodying the ethical limits of the famous 00 license, that it's not just a license to kill, it's a tool in your tool belt.
Yeah. And there's a lot of times where M is really functioning kind of as almost a parental guardian kind of figure, especially in some of the early Bond movies as well. And some, like you said, with Judi Dench. He functions as this stern but protective presence, especially in some of the early movies. We saw that it's more confrontational, but still you see that element in there of protection. And we, it's like, hey, since I become M, the 007 fatalities have gone down. I want to keep it that way. That's the kind of stuff you saw early on, and it becomes even more apparent in the later movies. And we often think of M as in this parental role with Bond, especially when Judi Dench played M. But all the earlier ones, like we talked about, Bernard Lee, who was tremendous from Dr. No through Moonraker, Robert Brown from Octopussy to License to Kill, and of course Dench from GoldenEye all the way through Skyfall and beyond with video cameo in Spectre. Ray Fiennes from Skyfall, Spectre, and No Time to Die. They all played this consistent role, differently played by each of them, but a consistent role as M. And again, M is a position. It wasn't like, it's the same person, all the same. No, it's a position. So they had different people playing M, but the role of M pretty much was consistent.
Well, and I think, we started this talking about the mirror of Bond and the villain. And I think that M gives a moral contrast to Bond to make that I'm not the villain and I've got to have some restraint on some of this. So M has to juxtapose Bond's emotional decision making with the institutional ethics and a set of rules that for the most part must be applied. And that's where the mirror with the villain tends to break, because the villain doesn't have that. M highlights Bond's flaws by not excusing them, because in a lot of movies, we don't get that. We get this, it's okay, it's only so-and-so. Here, it's, we don't excuse this behavior. And so it's a good thing, because, the whole moral contrast here is M is making Bond's internal conflicts visible through confrontation. It's a great storytelling device because we get to view Bond not just from his eyes, but through his superior's eyes. And we see these elements of Bond's stories get told very cleverly through the written dialogue.
Yeah.
And M helps Bond adapt ethics to modern threats without abandoning the core principles, bringing Bond back, keeping him from becoming that villain. And so M keeps the franchise tethered to responsibility amid evolving geopolitics. So we get through the changing eras, the changing actors, and the tones. One thing that's consistent about M is that character brings this moral constant through the whole series.
Yeah, I mean, really, M gives Bond his moral home base, and that's what you really need. If you're going to have morals at all, you have to have a moral home base. You have to say, this is where it starts, and this is where our morals are going to come from. Otherwise, Bond's life is totally unstable. I mean, in the job he's in, it would be crazy. So, all right. And then you have to have M be this ethical compass, because the world is not black and white, it's gray. And I interviewed somebody once who was, I like things to be black and white. I said, well, you're in the wrong business because we're in a high-tech business and things change every 2 seconds. So you have to move on. It's the same thing here. M is this ethical compass in this gray world, not a black and white world. It's gray. Everything is kind of fuzzy. So it acknowledges that espionage isn't clean, but it insists that it's necessary. And it helps define the line between justified action and moral compromise. And we see this in a lot of movies. So it prevents Bond from becoming indistinguishable from the villains. Like we're talking about this whole thing, the mirror image. So that's M's role and provides this overall grounding for Bond. So a big reason Bond stays Bond and does not become the villain. Now, all this matters to the franchise, and we'll see what happens now with Amazon. But we're talking about the franchise as we've known it since 1962. Without M, Bond risks becoming these rogue vigilantes. M legitimizes Bond's violence by embedding it in ethical oversight, which Bond needs. And the Bond-M dynamic turns action into a moral drama. It's not just spectacle, which permeates everything that we see in the Bond world and so on. But it's a moral drama as well, because there's a lot of times where it's questionable whether it's right or wrong and whatever. And M does provide this grounding, which is great, and it's good for the franchise.
And I think a great example of that is Quantum of Solace. That conversation that Bond has with M at the end
yeah.
really highlights this, that you've got ethical stuff you got to think about here. Don't just kill the guy. And he doesn't. He takes the ethical high road there.
All right, we're going to wrap this up. Every Bond villain asks the same question. Why don't you take the power for yourself? That's basically what they're asking of Bond and virtually all MI6 agents, CIA, whatever. Why not stop pretending, Bond? Why not step outside the system? And the Bond answer is always the same. Because someone has to put the power back where it belongs, on the side of the good. And I think that's a great message throughout all of these Bond movies, which is why we loved Bond as our guy on the side of good, because it was good versus evil in every one of these movies, and good wins.
Well, and I think that's also why we like the villain, because since the villain's a mirror of Bond, you really get that contrast. We have to think about it. Bond villains are generally more powerful than Bond, because they make their own rules. They're not bound by other rules. Dr. No told us this when he told Bond,
the successful criminal brain is always superior. It has to be.
Now, one might also say that's the talking of a egomaniac or a megalomaniac. But
it's true.
So when you look at the big picture, M, as we talked about, is Bond's moral anchor here. And Bond needs one for sure. Or he might slip into becoming the villain. He's not heroic because he's unstoppable. He's heroic, if at all, because Fleming said he wasn't designed to be a hero. At least to us outsiders, he's a hero. Because he stops and he knows when to stop.
That's the mirror. That's just the mirror. And that's why the villains matter in Bond movies. All right. I love it. So we dove deep into Bond villains as mirrors of Bond. And so that's a wrap. All right. Remember, if you want us to keep going with more episodes, subscribe to our show, Cracking the Code of Spy Movies, and keep listening and telling your friends about us. We can't do this without you. This has been Dan
and Tom,
and we thank you very much for spending time with us.